We are live and at 12:40 a.m. and 92.7 FM. The questions I ask you, I hope, are provocative. I hope you will think through the issues with me here. And one of them is dealing with our own prejudices against strangers and our own backgrounds. For example, we'll be chatting in a few minutes in God's good providence with Heike Clark, who runs Clark's Bakery with her husband James in Dunlap, the daughter of immigrants here since 1971. I'm the son of aliens as well. My father, from a very strange place, Bob Tulis, a TVA engineer who worked in pollution control. He was from Sudbury, Massachusetts, in the Marlborough, Mass area, west of Boston. My mother, an immigrant from Switzerland, she was the daughter of a federal congressman in Zurich, an industrialist who ran an engineering business and factories in Argentina and Brazil. And so I have a background that's you might say not. It is diverse. It is a diverse background, and there are people who they'll accept that. Well, these are all Caucasians. They'll accept that you have foreign blood. Well, we all do. The United States, the North American continent, is peopled by descendants of people who came here from other countries. Well, what about people who want to come here and think that they need to get here at all costs, and they take huge risks to cross the border, the Canada border, the border with Mexico, and cross into the country. They want to be able to exercise liberty. They're acting as if they're free. They're acting as if they could freely enter here and buy land, buy houses, or rent properties under contract to rent an apartment in a complex or a house and live there with their families. They're acting as if they're free. And somehow at this point, when we hear that they're here and that they're undocumented, that our dander gets up. We're upset that they're here, that they haven't obeyed all the laws that other immigrants had to obey. So how is it one group, the 11 or 12 million who are here illegally, how is it that they're in the wrong, right? That they need to be deported, and they need to try to get into this country by the proper method. That is what we have in the way of defense by conservative people, right? By Republicans and conservatives, and even some on the other side of the aisle. No, we can't have people here unless they're documented, unless they've asked permission to enter. And to say that the national government has that authority is, I think, to misunderstand its limited power in our Constitution. It doesn't have that authority to block and limit immigration. It has authority to deal with naturalized citizens, and that's it. It took power over the border in, I think, the 1950s, 1960s with a bill by one of the Kennedys, and has maintained that pretense ever since. But people who are seeking their own best interests, seeking market, seeking employment, seeking opportunity, maybe capital, maybe an escape from tyranny, escape from criminal gangs, whether state-run gangs or private drug cartels in the South, they should be free to come here, I would say. Now, I'm going out on a limb on this. I know you think that I'm risking my constituency and my stakeholders and so on, but I don't really feel that. I say that in deference to you, but the free market argument does not favor making crimes of being someone who doesn't have papers, right? If you're an undocumented American, I would say, well, you're a very unusual person, and I would like to meet you, right? There are a few undocumented Americans. These are people who don't have SSNs, who are outside the system, who buy and sell in pure liberty, and who are not involved in employment, which, of course, is a statutorily defined relationship that the federal government claims authority over in the tax code. And they are free. So what about all the Hispanics, the Hondurans, the Guatemalans, the Colombians, the Mexicans who are here, others from points further south? They are here, and they're undocumented too. Well, no, they're not free people. No, we shouldn't admire them. No, we should not hope for their well-being. We should not seek for their safety. We should turn them into ICE. We should turn them into the federal government and have them arrested because they're taking advantage of us, right? They're taking advantage of our welfare system. What we have in this whole reaction against foreigners, whether they're Kurds or Syrians or Mexicans, is the person speaking takes a sudden interest in the integrity of the welfare state, right? The integrity of the surveillance state, the military state, and wants to make sure that only Americans get welfare. And you end up being a defender of the socialist status quo, the unconstitutional status quo, and you are maybe that's not a position you should be in. Maybe you should say, well, let's stand on principle that someone who's done has committed no crime, someone who's committed no injury or ruin of another person should be free. He should not be viewed with suspicion. That is a basic premise of innocence, right? In our law, even. And so how is it that we look at a dark-skinned man with dark hair? He looks like he's a descendant from the Incas, perhaps, from Central America or South America. Here he is as an immigrant. He's here, quote, illegally. He's undocumented, doesn't have his papers, and he's in a car traveling. He rents a house with his wife and children, and he is looked at with disdain. I think we may have the wrong ideas about national polity, and we can just let them aside for now. But I would say the requirement for the Christian, anyway, is to always look out for the stranger. I've been in my travels listening to Mr. Scorby's version of the Bible, and he's been telling about how the alien shall not be oppressed. There shall be one law for the alien and the Israelite. This is David Tulis. Caller, you're live on the air. Go ahead, hit me.
David, what I love about you is you'll take a position that 99% of the people will disagree with you on. You're so wrong on this position; it's ridiculous. First of all, it's only liberals that look at dark-colored people and see a threat. Conservatives don't. I'm a conservative, and I never did. But liberals do. They want to label them black, Africans, Chinese. Conservatives don't do that. And I'm going to tell you where you're wrong on the law. And I hate to do this, but we have to get this settled. All nations have a right to protect their borders. And I want to bring out the act. If you give me a minute to pull it up.
Uh-oh.
And
I'm bracing myself.
1790, it was the first naturalization law. Enables those who had resided in the country for 2 years to keep their current status. They have to have good moral character. The Naturalization Act of 1795 increased residency requirements to 5 years. 3-year notice to apply for citizenship. The Naturalization Act of 1798 further increased residency requirement of 14 years, required 5 years notice to apply for citizenship. One of the tenets of being a country is that you control your borders.
But Mike, listen, thanks for making my point for me.
The second man walked out of the cave if you're an atheist.
Mike, you're making my point for me. The law in the 1790s was not on immigration. It was on naturalization. In other words, the federal government claimed no authority to stop anybody from coming into any of the colonies or states. Okay, it did not. It did have rules for naturalization.
You weren't of a good character. You were shipped back.
Yeah, but Mike, the point is that you were shipped back. No, it's not that you were shipped back. It's just you were not allowed to be naturalized. That's all. You weren't thrown out. You just could not be a naturalized American.
Back. As a matter of fact, Lincoln talked about it. I'll point out some facts about Lincoln didn't like blacks. He wanted them shipped back.
I know.
In his own words, from whence they came, their ancestry. So no, we put people on boats and ship them back. And I can point out, and here we need border control now more than ever. Not only because of the welfare state, but because of the power of foreign governments like the Chinese, who would just pull up to our borders and unload their troops.
Mike, that's a laughable scenario.
I mean, philosophically, if everyone was a Christian, that would be great and there were no welfare. But today, a fat Mexican woman with 17 babies can walk over the border pregnant, go into a Los Angeles hospital, pop out another baby, get on welfare and food stamps, and you, David Tulis, are going to pay for it. I'm sorry. You can't come into our home unless we allow you to do that.
Mike, you're making a false analogy.
My home, and you're not allowed in here without permission.
Okay, well, Mike,
There you go.
well, listen, I do appreciate you calling, Mike. Thanks very much for calling. I'm glad you're listening to the program. But the analogy between a home and a nation is simply false. A home is private property. There is no such thing as property belonging to the nation. It just doesn't exist. There's federal jurisdiction, which would be lands ceded by vote of legislature to the national power, or magazines, post offices, and certain other facilities. Those are clearly federal jurisdiction. And of course, out west, I'm not sure how the jurisdiction was obtained, but the national government owns 90% of some states, such as Nevada and Utah. Now, that aside, whether that's lawfully owned or not is on the side. But the analogy that if we have a nation, we have to be able to keep people out, just as we do in our own homes, simply is not apropos. What we have to have is an understanding that the government uses power. It has the use of power, and should that power be used against people who have done nothing wrong, who individually cannot be presupposed to be like others in their race or from their country who have done bad things. So just because you're a Syrian doesn't mean automatically that you're a terrorist. Just because some people in Syria have committed terrorist acts, okay, or Lebanese or Libyans. Just because you're a Libyan doesn't mean, and you're seeking entry into the country, that you should be presupposed to be wicked and evil, and you have to now go into a system to prove a negative that somehow you've been vetted and you can be clear. Where does the government get the authority to say that somebody who has no record of anything done wrong, and we're going to presuppose that they're evil, now they must prove that they have clean connections, have no traffic tickets in Tripoli, okay? And so we're gonna let you in. We're gonna let you in. The government should not have power to control the activities of non-criminal people. Okay, that is a presupposition of innocence that Mike is forgetting. Government is not a house, right? Government is not a home. Government is the use of force lawfully applied or unlawfully applied. The city of Chattanooga runs a police department, and whenever those officers act outside of their authority, they are simply a gang. And we do have a gang problem in Chattanooga, and the biggest gang is any operation by the police department, soon to be headed by a man who's going to be named at 11 o'clock. That man will be the head of this department. And whenever the officers act outside of their authority, the police department is a gang. That's all there is to it. They're acting lawlessly, creating fear, fright, and terror among people who are their subjects. And if those people who are subjects are not subject lawfully, if they're not subject under probable cause, the officers are part of a gang. The whole Hanson Melvin case is a story about gang warfare. It is a gang case, okay? And the officers who perjured themselves to arrest him and charge him, that is gangland activity. That is simply a gang activity. 800-8949, 800-8949, if you'd like to chip in. Immigration should be a right. There should be a right to immigrate, and there should be free immigration. There should be open borders. There should be an immediate and unconditional amnesty for all. Anybody who's here without papers should be free. They should be free. There should not be a presupposition, apart from a warrant or apart from an officer having seen a crime being committed, to lock up or arrest any person of other skin or other language. There should not be a presupposition of guilt. The state does not have the authority to operate that way, right? If we don't want it to operate that way against us, why do we want it to operate against other people who are family people, business people, innocent travelers here trying to flee from Mexico, trying to flee from Colombia, trying to have a decent life like the life you have? 800-8949. You know, we can shut our doors of our house, that's true, but we should national government shut the border, as President Trump is proposing to do? I don't think there is. I think the idea of the nation is simply a corporation. It's simply a political corporation. It is, in fact, a religious corporation that presupposes its own sovereignty, and that is to say, it has omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence, and those are the attributes of God alone. And our national power in Washington exercises these powers as if it really had them, as if it had them legitimately. It doesn't have them legitimately. It doesn't have them from the Constitution, which is an enumerated powers doctrine. It has them illegitimately by threat, force, coercion, and deceit. the national power in Washington has deceived us. And what have we done? Well, we've just agreed with it. We've agreed that it can do that. And caller, this is David Tulis. You're live on the air. What's on your mind?
Hey, David. I had a comment regarding immigration, based on personal experience. And like in the construction industry, coming out of Texas, I had to get out of construction a lot because it was so incredibly difficult to find subcontractors to hire that were legal. And it was a major challenge. Yet there were plenty of contractors that would pay these subcontractors under the table, and these subcontractors weren't paying taxes. And I didn't want to contribute to that, so I had to get out of the construction business a lot due to that reason. So how does something like that get managed if we're not allowed to pursue that? Does that make sense?
No, I'm not exactly following what you're saying. You're saying that because in that business, in the contracting business, you were in Texas, there were sort of gray market players. How you're saying how can I support my position for an open border, and we have a gray market? Well, it's a great question, and here's what I think you need to consider. The free market is the gray market, right? It is condemned as anarchy by the state. It is condemned as black market by the press. That's how the press describes gray market, black market, illegal market. Whether it's in money, whether it's in business, the free market is all gray. But I would say let's take away these pejoratives and say that it's a well lit economy. In a free market, it's all well lit, and there is minimal taxation, there's minimal regulation, minimal licensing, and so people can act freely in their horizontal business relationships. But the question you asked, I'm not really getting to the problem that you had. Caller, I do thank you for calling me, and that is the peril you faced as a licensed business who had contractors, who had subs, who were unlicensed and unregulated, just people making their living in the trades, who were doing dealing in cash and were not somehow made liable, or they were not subject to the state. That the state, and here's what happens when you have progressivism. You have business people become enforcers for the state on the grounds that, well, if I have to deal with regulation and taxation and filing requirements, so do all my people below me. And so what happens is the first claim of authority by the state pushes itself down through the economic chain to that final subcontractor who's laying the brickwork or putting who's putting the glue in between the cracks. David Tulis, you're live on the air. What's on your mind, caller?
David, Americans are lazy. If it wasn't for illegal Mexicans, I would never have had my hangar built. I waited 2 years because we couldn't find the workers. So without so-called illegal Mexicans, my hangar is not getting built. And when they worked, I've never seen anybody work so hard. So why don't we get mommies and daddies to get their lazy little boys off their rear ends and start picking tomatoes and food and start actually working for a living. You know, America has caused its own problem. They give away free food. They give away free to everyone that comes in. Stop the freebies. And if you want to come in and work, come in and work. That's the problem. Look in the mirror. We're the problem. Thanks.
Well, Mike, I appreciate that. We are the problem, and we've allowed this to happen, and we can't have freedom all at once. It won't happen. Freedom is something, and liberty is is something that is attained slowly. And what we're doing, hopefully, is pushing back the desire for control. And we have these controls because we consent to them, and we want them. And so, at every turn in local economy here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, we have these controls. And so, what we have to have is the desire for them to be ended. And until we have that desire, until we have a rise in non-compliance, we're going to all be forcing down upon those beneath us in our business relationship. We'll be pressing upon them to claim for this. Well, you have to have a social security number. Well, you have to have this, you have to have that. And this system is sclerotic. It's very heavy. It's very friction creating in the economy. It's very costly. It inhibits capitalism. It inhibits entrepreneurship. And we have to want liberty and then resist slowly as we go these impositions against the free market and against local economy. David Tulis, thanks for listening.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.